With the drop of the Final Shape DLC, I believe that slug shotguns may be the best special weapons in the game. With the ability to outrange pellet shotguns and better ammo economy than snipers or fusions, I actually believe there is a place for slugs in the current meta. Today we will be ranking every single slug shotgun that has not been sunset inside of PvP. First, there are a few things I want to point out about slugs. The first thing is that there are not very many of them and they are not all that diverse. This means that when you put a lot of them on paper next to each other, they're really very similar a lot of the time. So today's ranking will take stats and perks of the weapons as well as my personal feel for them. I'm going to combine this with my knowledge of what top players use to put them sort of in this tier list. Basically, it's going to combine all of those factors: stats, perks, feel, and the preference or usage rate by top players. So with that in mind, let's hop into the video. If you've been here before, you know that we start things off with the dog water tier, patent pending. First up is the only one that I actually think is dog water, and that is the No Reprieve, which is from Season of the Pirates or whatever that one was called, that rough patch in Destiny. So like I said, I think this one is pretty bad. No opening shot, no good perk options as a whole. If you wanted to use this, surplus and snapshot would probably be the play. It is craftable, but I don't think it's worth using for that. The only thing I could see with this would be sort of a meme melee build for fun, maybe with the origin trait and the pugilist perk or something, but that probably isn't that viable. It's just the only reason I could see using it, so I'm gonna put it down in the dog water tier. Okay, we're actually going to move on to the C tier because I think these all sort of distinguish themselves from the No Reprieve. I think it's in a bottom tier of its own. Next up is the Bone Chiller. Now, I apologize, this is the only one I don't have any clips for. I was able to use it and try out some different roles. I just couldn't get the clips to go through. I had to hop on someone's account, so I had some technical issues. But I want to point out, slugs basically break into two types of options. You have low handling and high aim assist, or you'll have slugs with high handling and low aim assist, right? So it's basically a trade-off between handling and aim assist. So if you prefer the higher aim assist type of slug, the Bone Chiller is one of these. So this could be an option for you. I actually prefer the other type. So for me, this is going to be sort of in a lower tier here in the C tier. But if you do prefer the high aim assist, low handling slug, then this is definitely a viable option. It does get surplus and opening shot, pretty solid perk combo there. Surplus isn't the best, but I think people give it a lot more hate than is deserved. So surplus is decent. Overall, this isn't my preferred slug type, like I said, but it is decent. So if you wanted to bump this up, I could definitely see that. Next up might be a hot take, but we have the first in, last out. I've heard M&K players like this one, but as a controller player, I hated this one. I had the worst time using it compared to any other slug. I had a huge issue trying to just make it work for me. I do have a god roll. Most people probably have a god roll as well. I believe one was sold at the gunsmith at some point. So it does get opening shot and slide shot. On paper, it's pretty decent. This might be one of those M&K versus controller things because, like I said, most of the players I've heard that like this do use M&K, so maybe that's what it is. But for me, I'm going to put it in the C tier. Okay, now we are entering into the B tier. So I think these ones are a little bit better than the C tier, sort of distinguish themselves in one way or another. And first up is the Sojourner's Tale. I know a lot of people who love this one. I don't really care for it personally, but it can be pretty good. Threat Detector or Quick Draw paired with Opening Shot are pretty much the best perk combo you're going to get. It doesn't really get much better than that. I know a ton of people that really like this one. I have a lot on my friends list who actually use this. I don't think the stats really stack up to some of the other low aim assist options in the slot, and I don't really care for the sights. And it's also pretty hard to get a good one, so for me, I feel sort of in this B tier is pretty fair. Okay, the next two in this tier are pretty much identical in my opinion, which are going to be the Fortissimo and the Blasphemer. They both have pretty identical stats other than the Fortissimo having way better handling. Other than that though, they're pretty much the same. The Fortissimo has slightly better stats in most of the important categories. So I am going to place Fortissimo slightly higher, mostly because of the handling, but I will say this is one of those that has 1,000 perk options. So Actually getting a threat detector opening shot roll is going to be nearly impossible for most people. Blasphemer can get threat detector or quick draw opening shot, and it can also get hipfire grip. Do not sleep on hipfire grip. It's actually a pretty solid perk. So yeah, these are pretty much very even to me, very similar, and they're in the same slot. Fortissimo does have slightly better stats, so I will put it above Blasphemer, but for 99% of the players out there, the Blasphemer that you're able to get will be better than any Fortissimo you can get, so just keep that in mind. Okay, now we're into the A tier. First off, we have one that I do not like at all. This one failed the feel test for me, and I really don't like the sights either, but I have to say that on paper it is very good, and that is the Super Cluster. The Super Cluster is a strand slug, which is unique. It also has a pretty cool perk pool. You get slide shot or threat detector, along with probably fragile focus in that second column or second perk slot. So on paper, it has pretty good stats. It is craftable, and the perks pretty much put it up to sort of 90 plus range and handling. It also has a good origin trait that buffs the handling and the range when you are low health. So very good all around. On paper, it's kind of a beast, I'm not gonna lie. So for me, it just comes down to it's very good on paper. I didn't like it at all, so I feel that sort of in this A tier is a fair spot to put it. Okay, next up is one that may be a hot take, but we'll see. Let me cook. We got the Nessa's Oblation from the Root of Nightmares raid. Out of every single one that we have talked about so far, this one felt the best to me. The stats actually do back it up once I started looking at it. It can be adept, it can be enhanced, as well as it is craftable. The origin trait gives you plus 10 handling if you throw on a heavy weapon from the same raid, so it's very easy to do. Basically, with opening shot, you will be looking at nearly 100 range and nearly 100 handling with 60 plus aim assist. Very, very solid. The one downside to it is that first perk column really has nothing going for it. The best option is probably Demolitionist. I went with Dragonfly just for the memes, but those are really the only two that even do anything in PvP. So it doesn't really matter which one you want to use, but I will say the stats and the origin trait more than make up for that perk column. So I don't know, give this one a try. Let me know what you think. Okay, now we are in the S tier. These are the best of the best. First up, we have Duality. So this one is hard to rank. Is it just the best because it can be used as a pellet? Nothing else can do that, so that just make it number one. I also believe it technically has the most range of any slug, I believe, except for maybe Chaperone with the perk proc. Ultimately, I think you have to put it in S tier no matter what. I think just on paper for what it is, it has to go in S tier. It's really just up to feel for how high you want to put it there. Do you really like it? Do you hate it? I think even if you hate it, you got to put it in S tier. I don't necessarily hate it, but I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of Duality for the feel. I play worse with it than a lot of the other slugs. That is something I'm going to keep in mind here. But like I said, I think it goes in S tier. And you just move it up for however much you like the feel of it. If you really like it, you could probably put it number one overall, and I wouldn't really argue with that. I think just being able to hip fire up close so you don't sort of get jammed in close range and where you need a headshot, I think just having that ability is super strong, so I wouldn't knock you for that. I have heard that it is bugged right now. I'm not taking that into account at all. I haven't even tested it, but I've heard that the range is messed up with it or something since the DLC drop. I don't know. Let me know if you've heard anything on that. I'm not taking that into account because I'm going to assume that's going to get fixed. So yeah, just wanted to note that. But yeah, definitely S tier for Duality. Okay, now we have the Gnora's Axe from Iron Banner. At the time of recording, we are currently in the middle of our first 2-week Iron Banner hell, and this is what I've mostly been grinding for. I am looking for a hipfire grip opening shot roll. I do have one with opening shot, and I do have one with hipfire grip, just not together. So I use both of those, and yeah, threat detector opening is the one I have. It's probably what you want. I think that's like the best option, but that hipfire grip, man, is actually pretty good. So don't sleep on that. If you have one of those, give it a try. If not, and you feel like grinding it out, I mean, we got 2 weeks, we got nothing else to do, so maybe try to grab one of those. I will say it's just solid all around. It has some of the best perk combos, being opening shot and threat detector, and the origin trait actually does give plus 40 handling, I believe, when you reload. So it's not bad at all. Overall, it has good stats. It can get to like 95 range and handling with god rolls, so it's really solid all around. Definitely deserving of the S tier. Next up is the Inquisitor. So this is very similar to Gnora's Axe. It's really just preference between the two, but I just have to say the Inquisitor just has crazy stats, so much to the point where when you have a god roll, you kind of waste some stats, right? Like it like caps out at 100. So basically the difference between the two is that they can both get to this like 100 range, 100 handling baseline. Like they can both get to that. It's just much easier for the Inquisitor to do that. Like there's several ways. You have Alacrity. If Alacrity pops, like you're basically just, you have 4 100 stat bars. Like it's actually crazy once Alacrity procs. But even without that, just having opening shot and perpetual motion, or the adept mods, or like I said, or alacrity, just there's so many ways to get this to, you don't even need a god roll, right? If you just have a pretty solid roll, it's going to be the same as a god roll almost, because of how crazy the stats are. So yeah, overall it's one of these 100 handling, 100 range, and you get pretty decent aim assist. It is the lower aim assist archetype, but honestly, I don't really notice it. I prefer the higher handling. But again, like I mentioned with the Bone Chiller, if you prefer the other way around, then perhaps you would lower these. But if you're in trials or something, I'm telling you, Alacrity goes off. This thing is just cracked. Like you're going to have the highest stats of any slug in the game if Alacrity's up. And yeah, I think that just makes it edge out Gnora's. So I'm going to put it sort of in the S tier right above Gnora's Axe. Okay, next up is the Heritage from Deep Stone Crypt. So you remember how I said there's basically 2 types of slugs, like there's a trade-off in the stats. Well, Heritage just said, nah, I'm good. I'll take both. So Heritage just has, it's just stacked, right? It basically has high handling and high aim assist and high range. So it just has everything. It doesn't really make sense, but for some reason they just gave it everything. It's also craftable. So the only downside to it is the perk selection isn't the best, but you can basically use slide shot to make up for that. So it'll get something like slide shot and snapshot, or slide shot and moving target. I also believe offhand strike can do some cool things as well, but you do need ammo for that. Overall, it's just a stat monster. It's craftable. If you have access to the rating, like you have a group of people to run with, I know not everyone does, unfortunately, but if you do, it's not that hard to get. It's really just a matter of time, because you can just get the red borders and craft what you want. So overall, just it's gonna go in the high S tier here. And next we have the Chaperone, right? The GOAT. Chaperone just ignores the rules as well. It gets high handling, high aim assist, high range, and it gets a crazy exotic perk that just makes it actually broken. The range with Roadborne up is disgusting. We all know this. I will say the ammo situation of the new system is a pretty big nerf to Chaperone, specifically because the perk only goes if you have more bullets, right? If you have 1 bullet, you kill someone, you proc Roadborne, doesn't really matter if you don't have another bullet, right? So the nerf is pretty big as far as the ammo goes, but with the new system coming, that's only trials, and with the new system coming to trials soon, I will say that probably isn't such a big deal. The old drawback to Chaperone was basically you could jump in the air with a legendary slug, but you couldn't with Chaperone. That's pretty much what the trade-off has always been. But the way it works now, you can put AE on your helmet and your armor. You can kind of get away with some jumping stuff on Chaperone. It's definitely, you're going to have less AE than a legendary slug still, but you can still get away with it. You can put the mod on your helmet. You can wear an exotic that gives you like plus 10 AE. So there's some ways you can kind of make it work. I wouldn't say I'm using this in the air exclusively, but you can probably make it work with that. So just something to keep in mind. Overall, Chaperone's just cracked. We all know this. I think it's the best slug in the game. So top of S tier. Okay, now we have Lord of Wolves. So this is the hardest thing to rank. I'm only doing this because I didn't put it on my pellet list, and I got a lot of comments about where's Lord of Wolves. So I guess I'll put it on the slug list, even though it's not really a slug either. So if I'm comparing it to slugs, like I'm just thinking like I'm never using this thing. Like I'd rather have a slug than this. I'd rather have a pellet than this. It used to be OP, but they've nerfed it pretty hard. It just seems inconsistent. The only way I can get it to like always kill people is if I damage them first, and at that point, like what are we doing? So For me, it's gonna go in the dog water tier down here by the no reprieve. I don't know. It's really a toss up between the two. I think I'd rather use the no reprieve, but I'm just gonna throw it down here. I don't think this is very good. I think it got over nerfed pretty hard. I'm not against that. That meta was actually pretty rough to play, so I'm okay with Lord of Wolves not being up there. But yeah, so I'm gonna put it down here. It's just inconsistent. Sometimes it maps people, sometimes it just heals them. I really couldn't tell you what makes it do. It just does what it wants. So yeah, I'm gonna put it down here in the dog water tier. Okay, and that's gonna do it for my tier list here. Let me know what you guys think. What would you guys change? But as always, I am awake, and I'll see you guys next time.